All right, hello, and welcome back to the Broken Business Models podcast. We're your hosts, Ryan and James. And before we get into today's podcast, just a quick disclaimer, nothing in this podcast or any of our other materials should be taken as investment advice. James and I could have positions in any of the stocks we may mention today, and we reserve the right to change those positions at any time. So make sure to always do your own work and consult with a professional before making any investment decision. With that being said, the topic of today's podcast is going to be a continuation of our coverage of PureCycle technologies. Just a quick recap for those of you who may be new to the story of PureCycle. PureCycle is a small company that has a technology which they did not develop, but they have this technology to create high quality plastic material out of recycled feedstock. So the idea is that traditional recycling technologies can only create low quality, non-food safe, kind of opaque colored plastics that do not have certain desirable qualities. But this new technology can create almost, plastic material that's almost the same quality as virgin plastic. The problem is that PureCycle has not been able to ramp up production to an industrial scale using this technology because of various operational difficulties. And as a result of that, they've not been able to generate any significant revenue to date, and instead have incurred massive losses and negative free cash flow, which they've had to fund with continual capital raises. They just reported their Q2 earnings for 2025 just yesterday, and basically over the course of their life as a public company, they have historically overpromised and underdelivered with various promises about their production capacity, the quality of their material, their customer pipeline. And every time basically these milestones have been missed, they've had various excuses to explain why. Most recently, in their 2024 investor presentation, they said that they expect to have that they have this new commercial partnership with Proctor Gamble. Obviously, it would be a huge customer for them, and they said they expect to have significant, hundreds of thousands of pounds of sales to P&G by the second quarter of 2025. This investor presentation was released towards the end of February of 2025. So basically only 1 month before Q2 would begin. So very, very close to the second quarter, which they were saying they were expected to have, all these massive sales to Procter & Gamble. So let's see how that turned out for them. In Q2, they reported sales at near zero, and they in fact made no sales to Procter & Gamble during the second quarter. Instead, they made a huge net loss of over $100 million. In the previous video that we did on PureCycle, we mentioned how they had very, very little cash and equivalents left, and given their rate of free cash flow burn, they had to do something in the last quarter to fund those losses. And in fact, in the last quarter, they raised $300 million of preferred equity from various investors. They said that this $300 million was to go towards building a new production facility in Thailand. But in fact, they really needed it just to fund their cash burn during the most recent quarter. So that's the backdrop of PureCycle in Q2 2025. I'll kick it over to you, James, to talk a little bit more about what happened in the quarter.
Yeah, so as Ryan explained, PureCycle generated almost an insignificant amount of revenue in the second quarter. So we can see here in the second quarter, they generated $1.6 million of revenue, which is about the same as what they generated in the first quarter. And they incurred an operating loss of $46 million. So the revenue is basically, it's almost nothing, $1.6 million. It's a pittance. Now, they did announce that they have this new deal. They made a big fanfare in their presentation and in the earnings call that they had signed this new partnership with Emerald Carpets, which is a maker of carpets. And they signed a deal that they would supply approximately 5 million pounds of their compounded their compounded polypropylene to emerald carpets, and they talk this up as if it's such a big deal. But 5 million pounds is very little. That's probably around $5-ish million of revenue per year, because we don't know what the pricing is, but the pricing is probably somewhere around $1 a pound, somewhere in that range. So 5 million, they're bragging about they got $5 million of revenue a year from this deal they have with Emerald Carpets when they're burning like $45 million a quarter. So it's basically a joke. Now, to date, the only two significant customer contracts that they have achieved is this one here with Emerald Carpets. And then last quarter, they had one with a company called Drake Extrusions, which also makes carpets. So the only two commercial deals that they've done so far are two carpet companies. Now, carpets are, and obviously a carpet is not food safe. It's not clear. As in, a carpet is opaque, right? So it's the quality of plastic that you need to put in a carpet is much less than what you would need in, say, like a water bottle or food safe packaging or things of that nature. Now, the entire bull case and selling point of PureCycle is that they could make the recycled polypropylene that is as such a high quality that it's almost identical to virgin, and then you can use it for clear water bottles, food safe packaging, and those types of things, which are more valuable. But now we believe that there are significant quality issues with PureCycle's recycled polypropylene, and so they have not been able to do food safe packaging and stuff. They claim that they're in the process of going through trials of it, but to date, the only two contracts that they've signed for supply agreements are with this Emerald Carpets and Drake Extrusions, which are carpets require a much lower quality. So this we believe confirms our view or adds credence to our view that there are significant quality problems with PureCycle's product. And that's why they've only been able to bag a few of these carpet deals. And they're very small. They're making like $1.6 million in the most recent quarter mostly from Drake Extrusions. And then they're going to get, maybe $5 million a year from Emerald Carpets. These are tiny deals. Now let's look at their production update. So in the second quarter, they produced 3.4 million pounds of polypropylene. Now this is only 13% of their supposed nameplate capacity of their Ironton facility. And this is in fact lower than the 4.3 million pounds that they produced in the first quarter. So their production actually decreased significantly. PureCycle has never produced more than 4.3 million pounds in a given quarter, even though their nameplate capacity is supposedly 27 million pounds per quarter. So they're operating at way less than max capacity. In the most recent quarter, only 13% of their supposed nameplate capacity. Now, in the previous quarter, in Q1, they disclosed that they had 14 million pounds of inventory. Now, in the second quarter, they only generated $1.6 million of revenue. We don't know what the pricing is, so we don't know how many pounds they sold in the second quarter, but it's probably in the realm of, say, like 2-ish million pounds that they sold. So that means their inventory has continued to increase. And by the end of the second quarter, they probably have somewhere around 15 million pounds of inventory. They have 15 million pounds of recycled polypropylene, which is just, sitting in a warehouse and has not yet been sold. And this, of course, begs the question, they have so much inventory, why aren't they selling it? Now, they claim they have, two different product lines. So they have their Pure 5 Ultra. So that's just the pure recycled polypropylene, which they claim is virgin quality. We believe it's not, but they claim it's virgin quality. And then they have their Pure 5 Choice, which is compounded. So that means they take their recycled polypropylene and they mix it with virgin polypropylene. So you get a blend of, part recycled, part virgin plastic. They claim that, they're doing this compounding. Each specific customer that they're working with has different needs or different things that they want. So they'll give them a customized compounded solution with the Pure 5 choice. And that's what they've been doing so far. And they say, oh, because each customer has specific needs, it's a custom job, it takes a long time to go through the process. And that's how they try to explain their minuscule sales and why it's taken them so long to generate meaningful revenue. But this begs the question. So it could make sense that the Pure 5 choice, this customized compounded product, could indeed take a long time, to actually sign supply agreements because of all the complexities involved with the compounding. But what about their Pure 5 Ultra? The Pure 5 Ultra, they claim, can be used for all applications and is a drop-in replacement for virgin polypropylene. Because it does not need to be customized, this should be extremely easy to sell, and you could sell it immediately. In fact, back in 2020, when PureCycle went public by merging with a SPAC, they claimed at the time that they had already signed massive supply agreements to sell Pure 5 Ultra, as soon as they were able to make it. So they supposedly already had massive supply agreements for Pure 5 Ultra, and the Pure 5 Ultra is supposedly identical to virgin polypropylene, so it should be very easy to sell, yet they have not sold any of it. So in their warehouse, they have over 15 million pounds of this Pure 5 Ultra, and they have not sold any of it. So why haven't they sold it? Now, the bull, if you, go on Twitter or Reddit and look at, all of the PureCycle bulls, and they try to explain this, the bulls say that the economics of Pure 5 choice are so much better than just selling the Pure 5 Ultra that PureCycle is husbanding their inventory. They're husbanding their inventory of Pure 5 Ultra and waiting until they can finalize contracts to compound it and turn it into Pure 5 choice, which they claim will give them much better economics. However, this makes no sense, because if the inventory is so valuable that it needs to be husbanded until you can, start getting orders for the compounded Pure 5 choice, if the inventory is so valuable, why are they only running the Ironton plant at 13% of capacity? If this inventory is so valuable, they should be running it at max capacity, or at least higher than 13%. So it doesn't make any sense, right? And also, if it were the case that you get so much better economics by doing the Pure 5 choice compounded, why did PureCycle even make a brand name for their Pure 5 Ultra? They claimed, oh, we have this product, Pure 5 Ultra, just the pure uncompounded polypropylene, and they claimed that they could sell it. But then why haven't they sold any of it? So, I guess it's easy for them to come up with excuses of why it's taken a long time to sell the Pure 5 choice, but there's really no reasonable excuse as to why they haven't sold any Pure 5 Ultra, despite the fact that they have massive inventory. And now let's talk. Earlier in the video, Ryan alluded to Procter and Gamble. So if you haven't paid too much attention to the PureCycle story, Procter and Gamble actually originally developed this recycling technology, and a long time ago, many years ago, they sold the patent to PureCycle. So PureCycle is the one who's making it, and the idea was eventually, once PureCycle reaches production, they would start selling the recycled polypropylene to Procter and Gamble, and Procter and Gamble would use that recycled plastic in their various products. Now, yeah, as Ryan said earlier, this here is from the Q4 2024 investor presentation. This was released on February 27th, 2025. So just a month before the second quarter. And in that presentation, they said that they expected to sell approximately 700,000 pounds of plastic to Procter & Gamble in the second quarter. And then by the end of the year, in Q4 of 2025, they expected to sell almost 2.5 million pounds of polypropylene specifically to Procter & Gamble. Well, in the second quarter, they sold zero plastic to Procter & Gamble. And they gave this statement. They said, PureCycle has continued to advance through the extensive qualification process with Procter & Gamble for a variety of application. Scaled production tests of the spout and dose caps for select bottles of P&G products are scheduled for September. Products with purified resin are planned to be in production by the end of 2025 and in stores in 2026. So they're not even going to end. So they're still undergoing testing, and they're not, even if everything goes well, even if all the tests go well, they're not even going to start production at all until the end of 2025. So this testing process with Procter and Gamble, it is obviously taking way longer than expected. Back in February, they thought they were gonna start selling significant amounts of product to Procter and Gamble within a month's time. Now that's been delayed till the end of the year. So why is there such a delay? Well, obviously there are quality. I suspect there must be major quality issues that Procter and Gamble is finding with PureCycle's plastic, and that's why these trials are getting delayed so much. And if you look closely, they're only doing tests currently. They're only doing tests for the spout and dose caps of select bottles. So that's like you have a shampoo, Procter and Gamble, they make like a shampoo bottle or whatever. And then the bottle itself, they're not even considering using PureCycle's plastic for the bottle itself. They're considering the cap, the cap on top of the shampoo bottle. So that's like tiny. That's like 5% of the plastic of the bottle. So it's basically like a joke. And then the whole selling point of PureCycle's, recycled plastic, the idea is that because it's recycled and it's like eco-friendly, consumers would be willing to pay a premium for products that are recycled because it's better for the environment and whatever. But imagine if like Procter and Gamble, they come out with a shampoo bottle. The bottle itself is still made of virgin plastic, and just the cap is made of recycled plastic. And not only is it only the cap that's made of recycled plastic, PureCycle is compounding it. So it's not even all recycled. It's like they compound it so it's like half recycled and half virgin. So the cap itself, which is probably like 5% of the plastic in the bottle, is PureCycle's compounded product, which itself is only 50% recycled. So the entire bottle, the entire plastic of the bottle, probably only like 2% of it is going to be recycled because they're not doing the bottle itself. They're only doing the spout and dose caps. So it's basically like a joke. Are you as a consumer going to pay a premium for a bottle of shampoo because it's 2% of the plastic is recycled? The whole thing's like a joke. So this whole thing with Procter and Gamble, it's obviously a disaster. It's obviously being massively delayed, and that just goes to show, the massive quality problems. And PureCycle always claims like, oh, we're doing all these trials with dozens of big companies. We're on the verge of signing massive deals. Okay, well, that's also what they said about Procter and Gamble, and this has been delayed another year and has been massively scaled down to only the dose caps, only the spout and dose caps. So it's obviously a failure. So that's something to keep in mind as these trials progress. And now let's talk about this recent capital raise that they just did and their planned expansion into Thailand. So in June, PureCycle raised $300 million, and they announced that they would be using this money to build a new plant in Thailand. And they expect to begin production of this plant later this year, and they expect to begin construction of this Thailand plant later this year, and it will begin operations towards the end of 2027. So the capital they raised, they sold $300 million worth of convertible preferred stock, which incurs an interest rate of 7%, which is paid in kind. And this preferred stock can convert into common stock at a strike price at a conversion price of $14 per share. Now, for this Thai partnership, for this new production facility they're going to build in Thailand, they're partnering with a Thai company called IRPC. And they talk about, we have a partnership with IRPC. And the way it works is IRPC, they have an existing plastic plant in Thailand. And IRPC is going to allow PureCycle to build their own recycling facility within, kind of on the side of this plant. so right next to IRPC's existing plant. PureCycle is responsible for paying 100% of the development costs of this plant. They have to pay for 100% of the capex, and so IRPC is not putting up any money. They have zero money at risk. Now, in exchange for allowing PureCycle to place the plant within IRPC's real estate, when and if this plant ever begins production, PureCycle has to give 10% of the output to IRPC. So the main takeaway from this is that the fact that they signed this partnership with IRPC, it sounds like a great thing. They were able to secure a partnership, but this partnership is not really a big vote of confidence in PureCycle, because from IRPC's perspective, they're literally risking nothing. They're not putting up any money. If this plant works out, they get 10% of PureCycle's production for free when they have like invested no money. They just have to allow PureCycle to use some land next to IRPC's existing facilities, and that land is unoccupied and doing nothing right now. So they're just letting them use some land and putting up zero money, and in return, PureCycle has to give them 10% of the output. So that's just something to note here. Now, as far as the idea of PureCycle going and expanding to different countries, if you remember, back in October of 2022, PureCycle announced, to great fanfare, that they had signed a partnership with a South Korean company called SK Geocentric. And SK Geocentric is part of the SK Group, which is a giant South Korean industrial conglomerate. It's like one of the biggest companies and one of the biggest conglomerates in South Korea. They have like tens of billions of dollars of revenue. So an absolutely massive company with huge resources. And then PureCycle, they signed this back in 2022, and PureCycle signed this partnership with SK, where they were going to develop a massive polypropylene recycling plant in South Korea. And they talked about, oh, this is going to be so great. We're going to make so much money from this. It turns out nothing ever happened. And then in 2024, they quietly canceled the partnership because SK realized that the technology is infeasible and it's never going to work. So nothing happened in South Korea. So if it didn't work in South Korea, why do we think it's going to work now in Thailand? Also, the Ironton plant, the plant in Ironton, Ohio that they have currently, is only operating at 13% capacity. It's only operating at 13% capacity. And what little plastic they are producing, they're having problems selling it, and their unsold inventory is piling up. So if Ironton is basically a failure and is only at 13% capacity, their previous thing they tried to do in South Korea is also a failure. And then now we're supposed to believe that this Thailand one is going to be a success. It's basically a joke. And as Ryan said, and as we talked about in our previous PureCycle update, as of the end of the first quarter, PureCycle was almost out of cash. They were like they needed to raise capital in the second quarter, otherwise they would have gone bankrupt. So they needed to raise capital. So given that they have to raise capital anyway, they thought, oh, we might as well announce this Thailand expansion, such that this is a convenient excuse to raise another 300 million, because they needed to raise the money anyway to fund the continued losses at Ironton. But now, just from a PR perspective, instead of saying, "Oh, we need to raise money, we need to raise additional capital because we're losing so much money at Ironton," that sounds bad. So instead, they're saying, "Oh, we need to raise raise this money because we're going to build this massive facility in Thailand, which, trust us, it's going to be a huge success, and we're going to make huge profits on it." Forget about the fact that everything else we've done has been a complete failure and we've massively missed all our projections. Believe me, this time we're going to make huge profits from this Thai facility. So give us $300 million now. And they were indeed able to swindle some investors to give them $300 million. But maybe they will use some of that money to build this plant in Thailand. But a lot of that money is going to go to continue to pay for the cash burn at Ironton. Now let's look at their financial position. So as of the end of the second quarter, they have $284 million of cash on their balance sheet. So remember, they just raised $300 million in mid-June, and then by the end of June 30th, their cash balance has declined all the way to $284 million, which is obviously less than $3 million. So had they not raised that $300 million, their cash position would have been negative, right? So that just shows, to my point earlier, they needed to raise the capital, regardless of this Thai facility, because the construction on the Thai facility hasn't even begun yet, and they're already burning through this cash. They also have a ton of bonds, a ton of debt. They have $416 million of total debt. However, most of this does not expire in a long time. So a lot of it's coming due in 2030, coming due in 2029, or even 2042. The only near-term maturity they have is this $9.5 million bond, which is coming due at the end of 2025. But that's not that big because it's only $9.5 million. So they do have a lot of debt, but the maturities are pretty far out. So that's not really a concern in the immediate term. The more immediate concern is their ongoing rate of cash burn. So PureCycle is currently burning $45 million per quarter in the most recent quarter. So that's an annualized cash burn of $180 million per year. So based on, they have $280 million of cash right now. Based on the current rate of cash burn, they will likely run out of cash by the end of 2026, at which point they will need to raise additional capital. Now, if they indeed begin construction at this Thai facility, this new Thailand facility, well, that's going to cause the cash burn to accelerate even further. But even if they come up with some excuse to delay the Thai facility, and then they don't have to actually spend any money on that, they're just the current rate of cash burn from the Ironton facility in their corporate overhead will burn through their cash balance likely by the end of 2026. So that wraps it up, I think, for everything we had to talk about in the second quarter update. Our opinion on PureCycle obviously has not changed. We think this company is a complete failure. We think that the quality of the product that they create has serious problems. That's why to date they have only been able to get a few small carpet deals with Emerald Carpet and Drake Extrusions, where they're selling their plastic to be used in carpets. And all of their other, their trial with Proctor Gamble is clearly not going well. And I do not expect any significant improvements in the coming quarters or years. So I think this is a failed company. They were able to raise some capital in the second quarter, which buys them another year. But the long-term trajectory, but as the product just doesn't work, the quality is too bad. Raising additional capital can kick the can down the road by another year. But this company is still ultimately destined for failure, in my opinion. So that wraps it up for everything we had to talk about. As always, if you have any opinions or thoughts about PureCycle, let us know in the comment section below, and we will see you on next week's video.